There was a report that came out a few days ago, maybe, about how the 49ers at number 3, after trading up 2-3, are locked in between Trey Lance and Mac Jones. It's a really interesting conversation. Obviously, the big question is, where's Justin Fields in this conversation? But overall, I'm going to start with you, Thomas. What are your kind of initial thoughts to the 49ers focusing on these two quarterbacks?
Okay, I'm going to bring up a comparison here. When you go sneaker shopping and you see all the sneakers on the wall and you go, oh, I really like all of those sneakers. Well, yeah, obviously you like all the sneakers, but you can't have all of them. You got to pick one. So, I mean, I don't know what the 49ers are going to do. They're a mysterious quarterback team. I mean, between Alex Smith all those years ago, I mean, that worked out really well, but now it's been Jimmy Garoppolo and it's kind of been a carousel in between. I don't know who the San Francisco 49ers are going to take, to be honest with you. It's definitely an up in the air kind of conversation. And if we look at the team around whoever their quarterback is going to be, we'll say, for example, I'll just use Trey Lance. He has all of the weapons to succeed coming out of the gate. I mean, you've got Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. He's got Brandon Ayuk, Raheem Mostert. He's got a fantastic offensive line, a defense that they can fall back on. From top to bottom, this 49ers team is just really good. There's no real weakness. I mean, I don't really see one, but other than the quarterback. So here we are, we're 24 hours or so from the draft, like you said, and they like all of the quarterbacks. Well, that's the point of the draft. You like everyone, but you can only have one. Goes back to the sneaker reference. And the aforementioned Trey Lance is the guy I want them to take. I like the idea of a strong arm. I like him, maybe throwing a little deeper for Deebo, George Kittle, who can run some deep routes, also can play short, but it's also a yards after the catch based offense for the most part. They run these little quick slant routes, these little pullback routes, and then it's like, okay, go get 8-7 yards after that catch. So, but I like the idea of taking Trey Lance. It definitely is a new element that comes to this offense. And the thing with him is that he is very motivated. There was an article I saw from NBC Sports, Ryan. He was on the, I think, Dan Patrick show, and he was saying, I'm ready to prove everyone wrong again. I don't know how you can turn that kind of attitude down, especially in the NFL draft, because not many rookies in most sports, I'd say, come in with that aggressive, oh yeah, here's who I am mentality. So I think just from that standpoint, it can add something different. And again, the strong arm, he can also move. He's got good legs. He ran for 14 rushing touchdowns in 2019. So there's definitely some promise here as a dual threat quarterback with the arm and the legs. But it's gonna be interesting to see how he can read a defense. Patrick Mahomes admitted it took me, like he said, 2 or 3 years to really read a defense in the NFL. So I like Trey Lance a lot, but for the 49ers, please pick one person. Please, for the sake of everyone, pick one.
Well, I think this conversation, like when you boil it down to it, it's Mac Jones versus Trey Lance is Kyle Shanahan versus kind of the scouting department. Yeah. We know who Kyle Shanahan wants. He wants Mac Jones. Mac Jones fits the mold of Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks. We saw Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins, two guys who I think comp similar to Mac Jones, have their best years with Shanahan. He's obviously a wizard. He is kind of the face of this franchise, so I think that's where the power struggle comes in. But then you look at it from the scouting department, Trey Lance has all the tools in the world, as you talked about, 28 touchdowns, 0 picks in his lone year starting at North Dakota State. The concern there is he hasn't been on the field that much. He has 1 year starting, played one showcase game this fall. You can't really take anything from that. So I think that's where the debate comes in, because you just don't know with him. It's so much more of a risk. I think Mac Jones is the safer prospect. He is the more ready prospect. But you traded up multiple first-round picks. You traded your capital to get to 3. And I was under the assumption it was because they had a guy locked in. So we don't know on that aspect. It should be reported that later in the week after, these reports came out, Shanahan had a wild press conference. He said originally they had like 5 QBs. Then he was asked if Jimmy Garoppolo would be on the roster Sunday. He said he doesn't know if anyone on the planet's going to be alive Sunday. So there's just a lot to take away from Kyle Shanahan. We just don't know. But the draft's coming up. Other reports have been shown that they were all in on Mac Jones. And as this process has came along, the gap has gotten tighter and tighter and tighter. But the other aspect of this is, where's Justin Fields' name? Because Justin Fields was a guy who coming into this year was 1A and 1B with Trevor Lawrence. It was Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields right under him. And he didn't do really enough this year to kind of fall as QB4 or even QB5 in this draft. I remember I said this on Saturday's show, but after that performance against Clemson in the college football playoffs, I saw him, with the Jets jersey everywhere on Instagram and Twitter. It looked like he was a lock to go number 2. He showed his guts in that game. He played injured. He outdueled the first overall pick, presumptively, in Trevor Lawrence. But at the same time, the narrative that's been building with him after that has been so fascinating to see, because we've seen his work ethic being questioned. We've seen his intangibles being questioned. First one, last one in, first one out. And I think it's an unfair narrative that's got built against him. And I don't know if the media really has a say in your draft stock. But if Justin Fields falls to QB4, I think you absolutely can make that case.
I think you absolutely have to. And QB4 is the Atlanta Falcons, who, Matt Ryan's sort of on the precipice of ending his career. It's the twilight zone, if you will. And a lot of people think that the Falcons could take Kyle Pitts. You know what? Look, like you said, if Justin Fields falls, and he's a really good talent as well. He is a very good talent. He's got legs. He's got a pretty good arm. And the fact that he can go toe-to-toe with Trevor Lawrence is just mesmerizing to me, because Trevor Lawrence was kind of seen as Thor. Like, he's literally a physical embodiment of Thor, the Avenger, with the gold hair. And he's just like this almighty quarterback at Clemson. And he's got Travis Etienne. He's got all these weapons and this team that's just so good. And then here comes Justin Fields, who's like, nah, man, I'm Loki. I'm going to go toe-to-toe with you. And you know what? You can't pass on Justin Fields. I think he's a good talent. He can definitely fix up a team. But the Mac Jones discussion is, I saw a hilarious thing on Twitter today. It goes, Mac Jones, when his quarterbacks don't get 12 feet of separation, he's just looking up like this. And he's in the Broncos jersey, right? As a joke, obviously, but I'm not that high on Mac Jones. I think I agree with you. Justin Fields is definitely better than him. Intangibles, IQ, physical talent, he's definitely better. And Mac Jones also, the same thing with what I'm saying with these weapons to succeed. He had Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, who won the Heisman. So his team was absolutely loaded. And Justin Fields, you could argue Ohio State, it was like kind of like this with Alabama, the echelon of player, as they were the 1 and 2, obviously, in the championship game. But look, if Justin Fields is there, if you're any of the team that doesn't take him within the first 2 picks, you should pounce on that opportunity.
Well, the one thing I want to talk about with the Ohio State thing that you mentioned is there is a narrative too that's working against Fields, where he's an Ohio State quarterback. They always stink. So what's the point? When has an Alabama quarterback ever been that guy? Tagovailoa is really the best prospect they ever had, but he's improving anything in the NFL. So I think that if you're going to discredit him for that, and then you're going to rise up Mac Jones, who, as you said, he was thrown to a Heisman Trophy winner. He was throwing to track stars out there. They were 15 yards down the field before there was any separation. Now, credit to Mac Jones, because he was able to hit them. He did a fantastic year. He really did rise up the draft boards. He was a late 3rd-round pick projected and late 1st, and now he's 3rd overall projected. So credit to Mac Jones. I'm not taking anything away, but Justin Fields did not do enough to fall down these draft boards. I don't understand that at all. The other thing that I don't really get either is, like, people talk about Mac Jones as this, like, smart creature of habit, but then they don't give that same credit to Justin Fields and Trey Lance. Those guys got Ivy League offers coming out, and Mac Jones is the guy with multiple DUIs. So, like, that narrative I don't get either. I don't know, man. It's like, it's such a weird thing that we've run with these narratives, and now Mac Jones looks like he'd go 3. He'd go all the way to 15, and Justin Fields looks like best case scenario, he's QB4. Like, that's absolute best case. He's not going to be QB 1 or 2. That's absolutely certain. He's very likely not going to be QB3. And then a team will probably choose. If it's between Trey Lance and Justin Fields, I think that's a real debate, because both have legit talent where you can kind of go back and forth. But if you're talking about a talent perspective, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields, that's not even a conversation. Justin Fields blows him out of the water.
Justin Fields, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you on that. I was just saying, like, their overall teams, it was because they were the 1 and 2, but I think Fields is by far better. And like you said, with Mac Jones DUI versus Justin Fields getting an offer from Harvard, I mean, that's kind of that was a funny tidbit, I thought. And your thing with Alabama quarterbacks, you're absolutely right. AJ McCarron, what has he done? Tua Tagovailoa is Tua turn over the ball. And I don't even know who the heck was Derrick Henry's quarterback when he was there. I don't even remember who that was. Like, they just, not to sound chalk, but the Alabama quarterbacks just are not good. And between the Fields and Jones thing, I mean, I guess you could take Fields. He definitely has more upside. And Mac Jones, I guess, has proven to mesh with stars, but any average, slightly above average quarterback can do that. I mean, Jared Goff has been the epitome of that idea with the Los Angeles Rams for years. Now we're going to see if he's a really good quarterback this year in Detroit. That is yet to be seen. But I feel if you have to talk between Jones and Fields, if you're a team that is desperate for a quarterback and say, look, we need someone who can throw the football immediately, I think it should be without question, all right, we're going to take Justin Fields. And that should be it. There should be no other words spoken after that. There should be none.
Yeah, the last point I'll make on this before we shift in the draft here is that if you're going for the more ready quarterback, if that's why you're picking a guy at number 3, then why not keep Jimmy Garoppolo around to be the more ready guy from day one, right? If you take a Trey Lance, who's more developmental for sure, you could have him wait. You could have Jimmy Garoppolo play 6 games, train with the deadline, and then hand, Trey Lance the reign. So from that perspective, I don't get it. But listen, at the end of the day, Kyle Shanahan, he's a lot smarter than me and you, Thomas. Now, if he goes Mac Jones, I will be all in on that because I trust Kyle Shanahan. He's so smart and he's been so good with quarterbacks. I will buy whatever he does. But personally, I don't really understand this narrative